College fantasy football, top 24 quarterbacks for the 2024 season. This is for our college fantasy football players, but it's also very much for our Devy players, our Campus to Canton players, our dynasty players who want to get an idea of some of these names we're going to be hearing heading into the draft cycle, because production equals relevance. And you're definitely going to be hearing a lot of these names that we're going to be talking about on today's show. So we have 24 players ranked for you. We're going to break down. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. Drop us a comment. Any player we missed you want to know about, let us know. John, we did the running backs last week. Before we get into the actual rankings themselves, talk to me about where you see the overall, strength of the quarterback position relative to the other ones when you're playing, in your college fantasy football, startup drafts or just trying to get relative value to the other positions.
I think the quarterback position is very strong. It is a top heavy with some amazing dual threat quarterbacks, which we will take a look at. And that can be a difference maker if they hit that Jaden Daniels level of success that we saw last year with the Heisman Trophy winner. But when you're picking quarterback number 18, he could essentially be the same as quarterback 30. I mean, The outcomes could be varied. There's still a residual of COVID. We have a quarterback available. We're not looking at him tonight, Matt. He's playing his 7th year in college football. We have a lot of quarterbacks who are playing their 6th year. So it's still impacting the college fantasy universe. Just to give you an idea about the difference in the game, in 2014, there were 4 quarterbacks over 4,000 yards passing. Last year, there were only 2. There were 15 quarterbacks over 3,500 yards passing in 2014. Last year, there was 14. So we see a little less of the prolific passing numbers. However, there's one additional rusher with 1,000 yards. There were 3 last year with 1,000 yards and 10 scores, and only 2 in 2014. So the game has changed a little bit, but there is lots of value in the players we're breaking down tonight, Matt.
Absolutely. Now, John, before we get into our rankings, me and you, we both play in the CFF Kings Classic. This will be our 4th year playing with that. It's I think some of the, if not the best fantasy football analysts in the college football sphere. And it's a super competitive league, but we also do it to raise charity for St. Jude. So I want to give us a moment here. The link to support our charity efforts will be in the video and episode description, whether you're watching or listening. But John, talk to us a little bit more about St. Jude's here, and then we'll get into our top 24 quarterbacks.
This is the 4th year we are broadcasting live from the Fantasy Football Expo. It is the 3rd year we are collecting funds for St. Jude's Research Children's Hospital. And anyone who likes what Matt and I do here on the Big Board channel or anything that we write, most of our information is essentially available out there. So all we ask of our viewers, $5 to $20 can make such a big difference. The first 2 years, we collected over 2,900. This year, the goal is 3,000. So please help us get to that goal of 3,000 for the children and their families who unfortunately might have to deal with cancer. We would appreciate it, everyone.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. Let's get into our top 24 quarterback rankings, starting with number 24, Miller Moss out of USC, and then 23, Will Howard out of Ohio State. I think these two right off the bat are a really good example of what you mentioning earlier. Once you start to get towards the end of this top 24, it becomes very wide open, because I think both of these guys have plenty of upside. But I also have serious question marks about both of them, right?
Matt, I have serious questions both also. I'm still pretty high on Miller Moss, and it's simple. It's Lincoln Riley.
It's the Lincoln Riley offense, right?
Yeah. It is, and we've been drafting Lincoln Riley quarterbacks for what, 10 years, 11 years? He was good in the bowl game. I know he has limitations, and he needs to become better looking off defenders and finding a second and third receiver. But Matt, right now his ADP is sunk so low. I mean, if he's your third quarterback in a Lincoln Riley system, I'll take it any day. And Will Howard, he's not your typical gunslinger in Ohio State. If you don't know, he played at Kansas State, and he's a dual threat who might get 500 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns for the Buckeyes. But lots of questions moving on to Ohio State in that offense we have this year Chip Kelly in charge. But
Run
I
first
like
offense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different offense.
So 22 here, we have Noah Fafita, and I think he was one of the best stories from last season. I mean, he essentially came out of nowhere, took the reins of the Arizona offense, I believe had a 25-6 touchdown interception ratio, great passing yardage numbers. And he's coming back this season, John, with I just finished, my initial round of summer scouting on the 2024 wide receiver class, and I'm up there. Tatoria McMillan has risen up to wide receiver 1 for me. So Fafita has what I think is the best wide receiver in college football going into this season. And I think he's got a huge opportunity. I think at 22, man, you'd be happy to get him there in ADP.
Oh, and welcome to Team T-Mac. But I mean, Matt and I, this is an inside joke. We've been, who do we like better? We both, then I would assume you have Luther Bird in second. So do I.
He's right there, yeah.
But Noah Fafita has been T-Mac's friend, football teammate since they were in middle school. They went to high school together. They both showed up at Arizona. Now, T-Mac got on the field right away. It took Fafita a little longer to get on the field, but once he did, Matt, he was incredible. The only reason he's not higher on the list, he's not a dual threat guy. I mean, if you're lucky, we might get 150 to 200 yards rushing, but I think he's a superior passer, Matt.
Absolutely. Joey Aguilar out of App State. Now that is a dual threat runner there.
Oh, yeah.
And, big time. And I'll also talk about it. He must be going on his 6th or 7th year as well. And then Preston Stone coming in at 20 here. Really the gunslinger for SMU. Very comfortable pocket passer. They're going to be airing it out now in the ACC. And then fellow ACC conference mate coming in at 19 is Cameron Ward. Cam Ward, formerly of Washington State, transfers to Miami, and he's worth a deeper look.
There's no question. And I like Miami's offense. I like the personnel, I should say. Matt, we discussed Damian Martinez in our Devy breakdown and in our running back preview show.
Yep, great offensive line.
Great offensive line, but you've got the Mario Cristobal factor. Cameron Ward is a winning quarterback. I understand why Cristobal and this staff brought him in to the program. He's going to convert first downs. He's going to keep the chains moving. He's smart. Yet he has come from 2 systems at Incarnate Ward and Washington State in which were prolific passing games. I don't think he's going to throw the ball at Miami as much, but his efficiency should take an uptick because of the personnel around him. They should win more games, and that's essentially why they brought him in. That's why I have him at number 19. I still like him. He's a great second quarterback on your roster. I just think his ceiling is capped by that coaching staff and the scheme.
All right, let's get into our next group of guys here, starting at 18 with Brady Cook, the quarterback out of Missouri. Now, Brady Cook, I think, quietly had one of the best quarterback seasons last year against some tough SEC competition. He's back at it again this year, John. He's got Luther Burden. Now, I think SEC defenses won't be as surprised to see Missouri airing it out, but still, Brady Cook is absolutely somebody we need to be paying close attention to.
I'm a big Brady Cook fan, Matt, and for a young man who's been in the SEC and was really a prolific winner last year, he's not getting discussed. Maybe it's because I don't really project him as an NFL prospect yet. He's still on the outside looking in, but he was CFF quarterback number 20 last year. Matt, he threw for over 3,300 yards and 21 touchdowns. He had 319 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. When you talked about Missouri, everyone likes Luther Burden and last year's Cody Schrader, who we loved as a rookie prospect. Schrader's gone. Burden's still there. They brought back their entire receiving depth chart, so that's good news for Brady Cook. They bring in 2 transfer running backs, Marcus Carroll from Georgia State and Nate Noel from Appalachian State. I don't think they'll be as good individually as Cody Schrader, but they might be able to total the numbers at Schrader or at least come close. Here's why I like Cook even more, Matt. The 8 touchdowns, you can replicate that. Sometimes when our quarterbacks get the 14, 15 rushing touchdowns and they come back, they don't get that again. Like even Bo Nix, he took a deep dip in rushing touchdowns from 2022 to 23. Now he made up for it throwing the football. So I like the 8 touchdowns. That is duplicatable. And 319 yards without Cody Schrader, Brady Cook could replicate that. So I think he's one of the better values on the board right now, Matt.
Our next 3 quarterbacks are young, fun guys who absolutely could finish the season much higher than this range. There's a lot of upside here, starting at 17 with Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. Now, we talked about Garrett Nussmeier in our quarterback rankings episode for the 2025 class. So take a deep dive on that. We're excited about his upside and his potential, primarily throwing from the pocket. But Kyron Drones out of Virginia Tech, he does both. He was effective out of the pocket, I believe about 2,100 passing yards last year, 17-3 touchdown to interception ratio. But he also had over 800 rushing yards. And he was really revolutionary in that Virginia Tech offense.
He was
been struggling for years. And he's young. I believe he's coming. Is it true sophomore or redshirt sophomore season?
I think he's a redshirt sophomore, but in today's college football, he's a youngster. So yeah. He's very young.
Yeah, he's got that dual threat upside for sure. I've been trying to get Drones in a lot of CFF and C2C leagues this offseason. And then Avery Johnson out of Kansas State. He had a great bowl game. I believe it was the Pop-Tarts Bowl. It was his first full start for the Wildcats. But they are excited about this guy, and for a good reason. He was a huge recruit for them, a true dual threat runner. I've heard the Kansas State beat suggest he might be the fastest guy on the team.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, and they're going to be running the ball a ton. They're going to be running it with Avery Johnson, of course, with DJ Giddens. But, there's that dual threat ability for Avery Johnson. There's that unknown, which is why he's sitting here at 15, but he could absolutely finish the season in the top 6 or top 8 of scoring. So I'm very excited about Avery Johnson as well.
And this little pocket of players, let's put Brady Cook. I do believe they're kind of in their own tier. I tend to lean, what are you looking for? You have Cook, who's the return and proven player. You have Garrett Nussmeier, who's in the Brian Kelly passing game at LSU that has been very kind to CFF managers over the last 15 years, from Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and last year with Jaden Daniels, Malik Daniels, and Brian Thomas. So you have this 5-star recruit who's landing in a very interesting offense, but he hasn't proven it. Then you go with Kyron Drones. Matt, the upside of this dual threat player on the Hokies, they could be one of the surprise teams in the nation. I actually think they have an outside chance at the ACC. So you have this uber dual threat playmaking quarterback. Now, he hasn't done it over the whole season, so there's a little bit risk, but man, is the ceiling incredibly tantalizing with Drones. And then you have, to me, what I call the wild card. Avery Johnson could win your league. His skill set, he could, Matt, be a top 6 quarterback in this Kansas State system. It's prolific at the quarterback position. The Kansas State is loaded. They have a good outside chance at winning the Big 12. And if they do, it's going to be because Avery Johnson took the Big 12 by storm. So it kind of depends which type of player are you willing to take a little risk on.
13, 14, I'm going to call this our chaos tier, all right? Shedeur Sanders at Colorado at 14, and then Thomas Castellanos at 13. Shedeur Sanders is chaos off the field, but Thomas Castellanos is chaos on the field. And it'll be really interesting. You know, he kind of burst on the scene. There was a little bit of the back and forth with the quarterback position for BC, but Castellanos proved to be that dual threat guy. And now he's going to be playing in the Bill O'Brien offense. So it's a brand new offense. It's one that nobody expected him to be playing in this time last year. If you told me, you know, he was going to be coached by Bill O'Brien. But then, you know, what we've talked about a lot with Shedeur Sanders is understand he's got great passing yards, but you're not banking on rushing yards from Shedeur Sanders. He's primarily a pocket quarterback. So although they're both chaotic, they're also very much, you know, they're contrasting play styles between the two.
Oh my God. I love the fact you call this chaos. And I did leave it out of the tier. I think these two players are very different than the four right below them. You know, I'm a little lower on Shedeur Sanders. We're both lower as a Devy prospect than the national community. The biggest reason in college fantasy football is, Matt, he had negative 77 yards rushing last year.
Not good.
That's, I mean,
not good.
We just looked at Brady Cook. We looked at Kyron Drones. We looked at the potential of Avery Johnson, which when you get those 500 yards rushing, Matt, that is worth gold in college fantasy football. However, what both these two young men have is they've proven success. Last year, believe it or not, with his arm, Shedeur Sanders averaged 27.9 fantasy points. Now, that's a 6-point passing touchdown, which that's how we prefer to play, and that's how we play in the Kings Classic. So it kind of balances out the running quarterback with the throwing quarterback. So Shedeur Sanders can do it with his arm, and that includes he was terrible down the stretch the last 5 games of the year. So there is a decent ceiling there, but the rushing is going to hurt him sometimes in certain games if that passing game isn't throwing. Castellanos, Matt, I probably wanted to put him in the top 10 originally. Then they hired Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tricky.
It's tough. I mean, we know he has the resume of Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, but let's be serious right now. Castellanos won last year with his legs. That's how he moved this offense, and that's how he was successful. Bill O'Brien has been working with him, and I've got quotes by Thomas Castellanos where he's working 3-step drops. He's looking to make progression reads on one side of the field. I think he has the skill set to do it, but Matt, we haven't seen it. So when we haven't seen it, there is risk. He averaged 28.5 fantasy points last year. So we know the potential is there. What is going to be the balance between Bill O'Brien and what Thomas Castellanos has been successful at? That's why I moved them down to 13. I still think he's going to be a good player for the Eagles, but there is risk in that Bill O'Brien. And would Bill O'Brien bench him if things aren't going well, how Bill O'Brien perceives the passing game to go?
Tough to predict how things are going to be going in Chestnut Hill, but never tough to predict how valuable it is to be a Rookie Big Board patron. I encourage you to head on over to patreon.com/rookiebigboard to get access to those 2025 scouting reports and rankings that I was mentioning earlier. Over 20 players in the 2025 class already scouted and ranked. We have our dynasty rankings, our Campus to Can help, CFF help. We have you covered on all aspects of fantasy football. Had a patron join just this week, tell me that they appreciated our work year round, had a dynasty startup coming and wanted that personalized advice. No better way to get involved. Jump in. It's just $5 a month, or you could save 15% off with that annual membership. Head on over and join us today at patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Coming in at 12 here, we have Seth Henigan, one of these guys, I believe year 6, year 7, but he has a ton of experience that he's bringing to a Memphis team, John, that has a real shot at winning the American and has a real shot at that 12-team college football playoff berth. Let's dig a little bit more into the experienced veteran quarterback.
Obviously, Seth Henigan has more valuable in 6-point passing touchdown leagues. But Matt, he has been tremendous since he took over the job. And I will bank on systems and programs. The amazing thing about Memphis, Matt, they have changed coaches, but the system and the scheme remains incredibly successful. Paxton Lynch, Riley Ferguson, Brady White, and now Seth Henigan were all great CFF quarterbacks. Henigan in the last 3 years, Matt, has averaged 3,588 passing yards and 26 touchdowns as their starter. He has finished CFF quarterback number 44, 33, and number 11. He has earned second team All AAC, the American Athletic Conference last year, and he was freshman All-American in 2021. The Tigers, we mentioned it last week. I think there's about 4 or 5 teams that will be competing for a playoff spot from the G5. The reality is Memphis is one of those teams. I love Seth Henigan, Matt. He is more valuable in 6-point passing touchdown leagues. So just understand that, everyone. But I wanted to talk about him because he is clearly overlooked and a very good college fantasy football quarterback.
Number 11, Haynes King. I think a lot of people still have this perception of Haynes King as the quarterback that really struggled to put anything together at Texas A&M. And I do think that if you're considering the Devy standpoint, that's probably a pretty safe place to leave him in your brain. But from a production standpoint, from a college fantasy football perspective, Haynes King was a really effective rushing quarterback last year. This is an offense that is it's starting to get some continuity behind it as it still reshapes itself. I know it's been a few years, but they're still reshaping themselves from that old Georgia Tech identity. It takes a while to really fully flip over that roster. And, King, I think, is set for maybe not the highest ceiling of any guy we're going to talk about, but I think he comes with a really nice floor.
Oh, he has a huge floor. And really, I look at the Haynes King season ahead in 2 chapters. The first 6 games, Haynes King and Georgia Tech should be very good. Matt, he is a prolific dual threat runner. So you're going to have a real nice fantasy points per game. The problem is the second chapter of the season, Matt. The last 5 games, here they go. Notre Dame, at Virginia Tech, Miami, North Carolina State, and he closes the year at Georgia. That is a big struggle of a schedule in college fantasy football money time, right? You need to win those games late in the season. You need to win your games in the playoffs. He falls, Matt. I keep getting him. He's like sitting there in round 10 or 11.
Take him. And you can figure out who's coming off the waiver wire later on in the season. That's fine.
That's exactly it, Matt. You've just got to be willing to say, I'm going to have to get a waiver wire guy, but he's going to be really good. And you know what? If he helps me with 5 wins in the first 6 weeks, I'll take it. So there's still value in Haynes King that is being overlooked.
You got to get to the playoffs before you can win the playoffs, right?
Yes.
All right. Coming in at number 10 is Jackson Arnold. I'm super excited about Jackson Arnold. High recruit in this Oklahoma offense, man. I think he's going to have the chance to just really air it out. So I'm excited about Jackson Arnold. I'm going to skip ahead to number 7 here because we're going to pair him up in a conversation with Nico Iamaleava out of Tennessee. Oh, yeah. Both of these guys are highly touted recruits, a little bit different of a skill set. Jackson Arnold is a little bit more pure pocket, but with Nico, you have that rushing ability on top of some serious arm strength. And they're both now playing in the SEC against SEC defenses. So I'm curious, John, when you're comparing Nico with Jackson Arnold, how do you compare these two guys, their skill sets? They're close in the rankings. There's a lot to factor in with them.
It really came down to me, Josh Heupel's offensive system.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm banking on systems, and that's how I prefer to rank players, and of course it can, once in a while, you get hurt by it. But at the end of the day, Josh Heupel's system has produced unbelievable numbers. I mean, if you don't know, he was at UCF. He was awesome as the offensive coordinator at UCF, everyone. Look at some of the numbers his quarterbacks posted there. He made Hendon Hooker a college fantasy football star, and he was drafted, Matt. And look at the receivers he put out. So I think Nico, sorry everyone for a second. I think Nico is a prolific dual threat runner. I think he's a little better with his legs than Jackson Arnold. So I'll take Heupel with a little bit of production with his legs, and that's why he's at number 7. Don't get me wrong. I think Jackson Arnold, if he hits, and that's still to be determined, if he hits a ceiling, he could win you a league because he could have 27, 28 points per game. But I think if you're asking me who is more likely to do it, it is Nico. But man, does Jackson Arnold. And if you didn't know, everyone, Matt referenced it. He was Gatorade National Player of the Year, and he played in the Under Armour All-American game in 2022, 2023, and he was a 5-star prospect. So he is in that bucket of highly anticipated, highly ranked young men playing quarterback.
All right, and the two guys I skipped over here to work Jackson and Nico into the same conversation are at KJ Jefferson at 9, Garrett Green at 8. These two pair up nicely in conversation as well because they're both have that dual threat, really rushing first. I think it's safe to say, especially even with KJ Jefferson now, we're looking at these two both as rushing first guys. Jefferson was a big letdown last year in what turned out to just be a miserable season for Arkansas. Now he's at UCF, and I think that we can have renewed energy behind KJ Jefferson.
Matt, absolutely. You have to put aside your recency bias. Arizona just fell apart. I mean, it's still Sam Pittman. What happened? I still don't fully understand. But right now, KJ Jefferson has brighter skies ahead in the Gus Malzahn offense. Gus Malzahn, he had Cam Newton, John Reese Plumlee the last 2 years. This system works for rushing quarterbacks. Jefferson should bounce back. And what can you say about Garrett Green? I'm all in on this West Virginia offense. I think they're very underrated. And Garrett Green averaged 28.9 fantasy points per game last year. I like him so much for the Mountaineers.
All right, let's get into our top 6 now, starting with number 6, Jaylen Mio out of Alabama. Now, John, earlier today I was logging the Isaiah Bond summer scouting report, and I liked what I saw from Bond, but I noticed, man, a lot of underthrown balls, a lot of stretching, reaching for off-target passes here. And now Jaylen Mio, he's got the new head coach coming in, new system. So for me, there's a lot of question marks to take him at 6, but you can't deny that rushing floor that's going to be coming with him. Is that how he gets to number 6 here in your rankings?
Yeah, it's on the rushing upside. Matt, he scored 28.9 points per game. Kalen DeBoer worked wonders with Michael Penix at Washington when he came over from Indiana. I do not think Jaylen Mio is as good of a thrower or as accurate as Penix. I also agree. The one thing about Penix, he didn't underthrow guys. And Mio does have some tape where he underthrows guys. Well, I mean, okay. He's better than Mio. Let's leave it at that.
Well, he's better than Mio. Yes. As much as I had my qualms about Michael Penix through the draft process, he slightly underthrows guys at a technical level. Jaylen Mio underthrows guys at an obvious level.
Yes. So I'm hoping that DeBoer will help him with that and put him in better situations. I mean, I believe in DeBoer as an offensive mind. And Jaylen Mio is just too good of a quarterback with that Russian upside. If he becomes more efficient as a passer, and last year he had 2,800 yards and 22 touchdowns. And if you don't remember, folks, he was benched for that nightmare game against South Florida where they put in Ty Simpson. I mean, I still don't
Tyler
understand.
Buckner. It was the Tyler Buckner game.
Oh, it was so bad, dude, right? So if you think about that, then you really say, hey, he had 3,000 yards and he had over 500 yards rushing. Milroe's a top 6 college fantasy quarterback.
And I will, I think on the Kalen DeBoer, I think his work with Michael Penix, I think shows he has the ability to hide the flaws of his quarterback. So I think
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's definitely an argument in the favor there of Jaylen Mio adjusting to the Kalen DeBoer system. All right, number 5, Jordan McCloud, Texas State. McCloud has been a journeyman, to say the least, has certainly taken advantage of the transfer era portal, but had a huge season for the Dukes last year. Played for JMU, James Madison, and was a real consistent college fantasy football contributor. So let's take a deeper dive on him. Now he's at Texas State. And, I should make sure all of our viewers and listeners know, John, we have no affiliation with Texas State, but we can't ignore how good their offense is in a brand new scheme to last year. It's really been consistently effective, and we can't ignore those Bobcat offensive weapons now.
Not at all. And this is why I love college fantasy football. I love Memphis, and now I've got to watch Texas State. You mentioned it. McCloud's been around. He went to South Florida in 2019. He moved on to Arizona. He moved on to James Madison. Now he's at Texas State. He never really blossomed. He had shown us sparks, but last year at James Madison, he was unbelievable. His coach moved on to Indiana. That kind of left McCloud as a free agent or transfer portal guy. He put his name in the portal. This is the interesting part, Matt. He stayed in the same conference. Usually we see these young men move to a different conference or maybe move up to a level of competition. But he was Sun Belt Player of the Year last year for the Dukes. And now he moves over to the Bobcats, and he's in this G.J. Gins offensive system. I think he's going to be prolific all over again. Now, the only reason I don't have him is high, Matt. He's good with his legs, but he's not prolific. So you're counting on him to throw like another 34, 38 touchdowns, which is completely possible in this offense.
All right, coming in at number 4, Jackson Dart for Ole Miss. 3, Byron Brown at USF. 2 is Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon. And I want to talk about Dillon Gabriel and Jackson Dart together. Both veteran, experienced quarterbacks. Both guys that are going to primarily work for the pocket. Jackson Dart, though, he comes with some mobility and rushing upside. Dillon Gabriel and Jackson Dart, they both benefit to some pretty quarterback-friendly play calling and schemes as well. I think these two guys are going to be names you consistently hear week in and week out, really tearing up the college football landscape.
Hey, as a college fantasy football fanatic, when you have Coach Lane Kiffin at Mississippi and you have Dan Lanning at Oregon, Matt, you have to pay attention to who they're having at quarterback. Jackson Dart with Lane Kiffin is in a smash position. He has started 26 games already, the vast majority in the SEC. I think he's got an outside chance at the Heisman Trophy. Hey, last year, Jaden Daniels wasn't on anyone's radar. More people are talking about Dart, so I don't think it's as much of a long shot as Daniels was last year. But I think the Rebels, they have a very good chance to get to the SEC championship game. They are just loaded. Look at the players he's throwing the ball to. Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins, Antoine Wells, the South Carolina transfer, tight end Kaden Suter, who's actually really good, people. You might not know Kaden Suter is a good tight end from Memphis. He was injured last year, but came on late in the season. Absolutely love Jackson Dart. He averaged almost 28 fantasy points a game last year. And what can we say about Dillon Gabriel? Matt, he's going to end up in that Bo Nix. He could break Bo Nix's record for career starts. Now, my only concern last year, 30 touchdowns against 6 interceptions. Spectacular. But he had 12 scores on the ground. I will say this. I doubt very much Dillon Gabriel will score 12 rushing touchdowns, but he should get 4 to 6. And he should up the touchdowns in Lanning system. I could see him throwing 38 to 40 touchdowns easy if he's healthy. If you don't know, everyone, Dillon Gabriel began at UCF as a true freshman. Then he went to Oklahoma, and now he's at Oregon.
Yeah, and he had quite a journey just to get to that starting position at UCF, too. That's a full story for a different episode. All right, I said 3 was Byron Brown, and I held off on our number 1, Kaden Suter, out of Liberty, because I think these two guys definitely belong in a conversation together, right? We're talking about group of 5 quarterbacks here, so you get that light schedule. Liberty, just the lightest schedule each and every year, I swear. And then you have, although Liberty, now they're in Conference USA. They switched conferences, right? Yes. So a little bit tougher, but still, I mean, come on. A group of 5 conference schedule here, both with high rushing upside to go along with some passing ability there. So I think most people are going to have Kaden Suter up there at 1, but it's pretty consensus to have Byron Brown in the top 3 or top 5 as well. Suter a little bit more of a well-known name at this point, but Brown definitely deserves discussion as well.
Oh, these are the dual threat stars, Matt. Last year, Brown had over 800 yards rushing. Suter had over 1,000. They both should easily get over 750, probably score double-digit touchdowns on the ground also. To me, Suter is a better passer than Byron Brown. That's just kind of looking at the two players, watching some tape. I do like Liberty's offense a little bit more than I like USF's. That's why I have them above these two. But they look at last year, Suter averaged 34.9 fantasy points. Brown averaged 33.9. That is gold. They literally are winning you games because they have 50-point upside. If you love college fans, this is one of the greatest things I love about the quarterbacks in college fantasy football. We'll probably have like 10 to 12, 50-point games from quarterbacks, and both of these young men have that upside.
Yeah, and I'm going to finish up this conversation with 2 Tennessee notes just because I have to. All right, Byron Brown plays for USF. Remember, their head coach is now Alex Golesh, and Alex Golesh was the guy who was really engineering and orchestrating the Tennessee offense during the Hendon Hooker year. So you look at Byron Brown's skill set, and it's not a one-to-one Hendon Hooker, but you have to think that we could land in a spot where it's a very similar type of execution between those two guys. And Kaden Suter, he might be the Liberty quarterback, but he initially committed and played for the Vols before he was kicked off the team for conduct issues, but has since fit in with what Liberty expects from their players, and so he's fit in well there at Liberty. But I mentioned that to say, he's got power 4 pedigree behind his athleticism and his arm talent. So, there's a big upside. It's not just a random group of 5 quarterback popping up for a one-time type thing. It's a consistent mark of athleticism there for Suter. So there you have it. There's our top 24 quarterbacks here for college fantasy football, but also helping our Devy and Campus to Canton players as well as our dynasty managers looking for a look ahead to the 2025 and beyond NFL draft classes here. Make sure you're subscribed, whether you're watching, whether you're viewing, and make sure you check us out over at patreon.com/rookiebigboard. And also the link will be in the episode description here. Help us support St. Jude's through the College Fantasy Football Kings Classic. Thanks for checking out this episode.